Welcome to a spine-tingling journey through history and hauntings with the Dark World Hub. The Tower of London holds over 1,000 years of history, secrets, and some say a host of spectral residents. From the tragic tale of Anne Boleyn to the mysterious White Lady, the tower's walls have witnessed events that have left an indelible mark on the fabric of the paranormal world. Join us as we uncover the stories of those who, long departed, refuse to be forgotten, their presences felt by visitors and guards alike. Are you ready to step into the past and face the ghosts of the Tower of London? Let's begin our journey into the unknown. Remember, the Dark World Hub is your gateway to the eerie and unexplained. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to join us on this and many more adventures into the darkness. Now dim the lights and let's get frightened. Standing majestically on the north bank of the River Thames in the city of London, the Tower of London houses centuries of history within its stone walls. For over 900 years, England's Tower of London struck mortal terror into the hearts of prisoners and enemies of the state. The infamous fortress dates back to 1078 and was first used as a prison in 1100. It has a history of well over 100 executions, including 93 beheadings and 11 by firing squad in the 20th century. So it comes as no surprise that a multitude of ghosts reportedly haunt the blood-soaked grounds, searching for justice or their missing heads. These are the tales of those very people who met decidedly grisly ends in the tower. 1. Queen Anne Boleyn. The second wife of Henry VIII, she is perhaps the most famous ghost of the Tower of London. Accused of adultery and incest with her brother George, Queen Anne was beheaded at the Tower in 1536. Shortly before her execution, she told the crowd not to blame her husband, who, as we know now, had invented these charges so that he could remarry in his futile search for a male heir. Anne is usually seen near the site of her execution, which is now the Queen's house, a house Henry built for Anne, and near the altar in the chapel where her body lies. A soldier reported seeing a light burning in the closed chapel. After climbing to a window to look within, the soldier is said to have seen a procession of knights and ladies, led by a headless Anne Boleyn. In 1864, another soldier, on duty near the lieutenant's lodgings, made a sighting of Anne's ghost. He claimed to have confronted and challenged a white figure, and when his challenge met no response, he plunged his bayonet into the figure. To his complete shock, the weapon did not meet flesh, instead went straight through the woman. Another story of Anne Boleyn's sighting says that every year on the anniversary of her execution, May 19th, a carriage being pulled by 4 headless horses and being driven by a headless driver stops at the entrance of the hall. Anne Boleyn steps out of the carriage, decapitated head being held under her arm, and spends the day roaming her former home until sunset. 2. King Henry VI. Like many of the grisly deaths at the Tower, Henry VI met his end as a result of a real-life Game of Thrones. As the only child of Henry V, he stood to inherit the English and French thrones. Yet Henry's life was plagued by royal conflict. In 1471, as the Wars of the Roses raged throughout England, Henry VI was imprisoned by the House of York at the Tower of London. Though initial reports claimed that Henry died broken-hearted of illness in the Tower on May 21, 1471, the likely truth is far more sinister. Soon after, Richard of York's son, Edward, seized control of the throne after the Battle of Tewkesbury, the newly minted ruler allegedly called for Henry VI's assassination. Henry was stabbed to death as he knelt in prayer in the Wakefield Tower. Haunting the Wakefield Tower, Henry VI appears at the last stroke of midnight, a reminder of his gruesome end. It is said that the king's pale figure has been seen wandering fitfully outside the chamber in which he was so brutally slain, and that the figure appears between 11 o'clock and midnight. 3. The Two Princes. When Richard III seized the crown in 1483, his 2 nephews, Edward V and his brother Richard, the Duke of York, were imprisoned at the Tower. By the end of the year, they had completely disappeared from public view. While their exact fate is unknown, it's widely believed that the 2 young boys were murdered so as to extinguish any hope of either royal laying claim to the throne. In 1674, the skeletons of 2 children were discovered buried in the tower's stairs. King Charles II ordered a royal burial of the remains at Westminster Abbey. Today, the specters of the two little princes have been seen in what is known as the Bloody Tower, dressed in their white nightshirts. They have also been spotted playing on the battlements, and more contemporary visitors to the tower report hearing the laughter of children throughout the halls and on the grounds. In January 2015, Mary Ryan, 40, failed to notice the spectral presence in her snaps of the London attraction until she got home, but now she's seen it. She's convinced the ghostly face belongs to Edward V, who was last seen at the site. Mary believes that her picture could be the first ever taken of the tragic young prince. 4. Margaret de Lapole. In what must be one of the most gruesome botched executions in recorded history, poor Margaret de Lapole, Countess of Salisbury, was imprisoned in the Tower as an enemy of the state after her son, a cardinal, denounced Henry VIII as the head of the Church of England. Unfortunately for Margaret, her son was in France, so Henry took out his rage on her. When she made it to the scaffold, she refused to kneel, saying, "So should traitors do, and I am none." As she was of noble birth, there were about 150 witnesses present. When the executioner raised his axe, she ran. The legend goes that he pursued her, hacking at her around the scaffold until she was dead. One night in 1975, personnel in the Waterloo block overlooking the Green were roused in the early hours by the sound of piercing screams. This was confirmed by men on duty in the Byward Tower, and a few nights later the guardsman patrolling the rear of the Waterloo block also reported that just before dawn, he too heard high-pitched screaming from the direction of the Green. The ghostly screams of Margaret are to this day frequently heard at the site of scaffold, and some visitors have even claimed to witness a reenactment of the bloody event. 5. Lady Jane Grey. The day Lady Jane Grey's relatives convinced her she was the rightful heir to the throne of England was the day she signed her death warrant. As the great-granddaughter of Henry VII, a group of men tried to put Jane forward as the rightful queen. But Henry VIII's daughter, Mary Rudd, had other ideas. When she married Philip of Spain and was crowned queen, she sentenced Lady Jane and her husband, Guilford Dudley, to death. Lady Jane was only about 16 years old at the time of her execution. At the scaffold, she was blinded and had trouble locating the chopping block, asking, "What shall I do? Where is it?" Her ghost has been reportedly seen around the anniversary of her death as a lonely figure walking amongst the battlements. One house in particular stands on the site of that occupied by Lady Jane Grey before her decapitation by the axe, and in the 1920s, Nellie and her family moved there from the Bloody Tower. Coming home with friends one night, they walked across the cobbles, then stopped as, approaching the house, they saw the face of a young girl looking out of Nellie's bedroom window. Entering the house, they hastily told her parents, and a search was immediately instituted. But as usual, no trace of anything untoward was discovered. 6. Lord Guilford Dudley. Lady Jane Grey's husband, whose remains were carted past the room that held Lady Jane Grey. At the Beauchamp Tower, Dudley's ghost is said to sit, weeping into the night. People claim he is responsible for the word Jane that was etched into the walls and is still visible today. 7. Lady Arbella Stuart. The second cousin of Queen Elizabeth I, when she secretly married William Seymour, the nephew of Lady Jane Grey, she made King James I very angry. Perceiving a threat to his rule, he put both Lady Arbella and William Seymour in the Tower. The two attempted an escape, but Arbella's ship was intercepted and she was returned to the Tower. Seymour, for his part, escaped to Flanders. He would never see his wife again. Desperate, she refused to eat and died at the Tower in 1615. Like Queen Anne Boleyn, Lady Arbella is said to haunt the Queen's house. The governor of the Tower, who lived in those rooms from 1994 to 2006, reported a disturbing event in which his wife was pushed so violently by some unseen force that it propelled her out of the room and into the hallway. Others have reported sightings of her heartbroken ghost on the grounds on the Tower, weeping. In 2020, a team of ghost hunters claim they have managed to capture a photograph of what they believe is the spirit of one of history's lost monarchs. The team claimed to have captured one of their members coming face to face with a chilling apparition at the historic Rufford Abbey in Sherwood Forest. The group believed they encountered the renowned White Lady of Rufford, who, according to legend, is believed to be the spirit of ill-fated Arbella Stuart. What do you think about the picture? Let us know in the comments. 8. The Royal Menagerie. A ghostly bear, believed to be linked to the tower's former use as a menagerie, prowls near the Martin Tower, terrifying those who encounter it. In 1210, King John established a menagerie of animals at the tower that were used in fights for spectators' amusement. This awful practice was incredibly popular with the people, and over the years it transitioned into kind of a zoo, where visitors could see strange beasts from all over the world, including a polar bear. While the Duke of Wellington eventually moved the animals to the London Zoo in 1832, some believe that the troubled spirits of beasts from years past still haunt the tower. Visitors have reported the cries of animals, including lions and monkeys, and one guard at the tower claimed a spectral bear charged at him, only to disappear as soon as he stabbed at the creature with his bayonet. Another of the menagerie, the Barbary lions, whose skulls were uncovered in the tower's moat in 1947, are said to haunt the Natural History Museum where they now reside. 9. Guy Fawkes. He was taken to the Tower of London after his part in a plot to assassinate James the Run at Parliament in 1605. Imprisoned in the Queen's House, Guy Fawkes was subjected to intense torture, likely on the rack in the White Tower dungeons. The screams and cries of Guy Fawkes are heard from the council chamber in the White Tower. A guard says he became aware of a buzzing sound, like that of a fly. Looking up, he saw not the gas fire, but a roaring fire of logs or coal. In front of it stood two men, side by side. They both had beards, and he noted their spindly legs as if they were wearing breeches and stockings. The bright glare of the fire prevented him noticing any details of their dress. They appeared to be talking to each other, and then suddenly one moved his head to lean forward and stare at the dumbstruck warder. Next minute, both men vanished. The gas fire reappeared, leaving the watchman to collect his senses and hope for the dawn's early arrival. 10. Josef Jakobs. A German spy executed at the tower in 1941. He is said to haunt the grounds, trying to hide from his would-be executioners. The chair in which the injured spy sat during his execution is still within the tower, riddled with bullet holes. On a cold September morning, around 3 a.m., a sentry was patrolling the front of the Waterloo block. The soldier got the feeling that he was being watched even though his colleagues were at least 50 yards away. The soldier reached the end of the Waterloo block, turned around and continued his patrol along the front of the building. Suddenly, within the illuminated foyer of the Waterloo block, he saw the silhouette of a man crouched, watching him. The soldier knew that all of the doors within the block, both internal and external, were locked. How could anyone be left in the building? The shape moved away, and the soldier used his radio to call out the guard and the armory's warden. The doors were unlocked, and the squad of soldiers entered the Waterloo block and gave it a thorough search. The security devices were checked, every room was checked, but nothing was found. The sentry was questioned extensively by the officer of the guard and stuck to his story. On the 30th of July 1980, a yeoman warder was leaving his flat on the second floor of the eastern end of the Waterloo block. He closed the door and heard a voice say, "Oh, sorry." Upon turning around, the warder saw a man standing by the swing doors at the end of the corridor about 6 paces away. The man passed through the swing doors and left. It was midday, and staff members from elsewhere in the tower did sometimes pass through the building. But the warder wondered where the man was going. He followed the route the man had taken and discovered that every door leading off the spiral staircase at the end of the corridor was locked. The warder described the man as wearing an ordinary-looking suit and a wartime-type brown pointed trilby hat. Several months earlier, in the early morning of the 24th of April 1980, 2 patrolling sentries saw a tall, dark figure at the east end of the Waterloo block. The soldiers chased the figure down the stone steps leading to the casemates, the area between the 2 walls of the tower, but could find no trace of the intruder. Another sentry had heard suspicious noises at that time, so the guard was called out. A thorough search was made of the area, but nothing was found. 11. Sir Walter Raleigh. soldier, courtier, and explorer, was beheaded on the 29th of October 1618 after imprisonment in the Tower of London. His fame and popularity ensured a posthumous reputation as an English martyr, a national hero executed to appease the Spanish in revenge for his attack on one of their New World ports. There was a belief that his death had been engineered by the Conde de Gondomar, the Machiavellian Spanish ambassador to the court of King James I. Such beliefs were dangerous. Visitors report feeling a mysterious presence and occasionally seeing an apparitional figure in Elizabethan attire. Over the years, it has been reportedly seen flitting noiselessly through the forbidding rooms of the Bloody Tower, seen too on moonlit nights by those whose duties take them past Raleigh's Walk, his ghostly figure floating along the battlements. 12. Thomas Becket. The assassination of Thomas Becket in Canterbury Cathedral on the 29th of December 1170 changed the course of history. Becket was one of the most powerful figures of his time, serving as Royal Chancellor and later as Archbishop of Canterbury. Initially a close friend of King Henry II, the two men became engaged in a bitter dispute that culminated in Becket's shocking murder by knights with close ties to the king. It is a story of betrayal, of the perceived abuse of power, and those who fall for standing in the way of the crown. The ghost of Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, reportedly haunts the tower's salt tower, with an angry presence possibly protesting his violent death. Traitor's Gate, the tower's most infamous entrance, had an eventful construction. Having erected the arch, the bemused builders returned to find it collapsed the next day. The king was furious and ordered its them build it anew, but again the archway collapsed. This time, however, locals reported stories of the ghost of Thomas Becket dressed in his bishop's regalia, taking the arch apart brick by brick. Acting on this news, Edward I ordered the gate built once more, but this time renaming it St. Thomas's Gate. It stands to this day. 13. The Monk. Not all Tower of London ghosts are famous royals. The ghostly figure of a monk reportedly haunts many spots in the tower and can often be seen and heard walking about Thomas's Tower in leather sandals. There have been reports of a monk wearing a brown habit, moving through the shadows, whilst a more recent occupant and his family recounted instances of having heard in 1974 a soft slap, as if of monk's sandals moving across a wooden floor. Disconcerting to say the least, since the residence had wall-to-wall carpeting. So if you visit the Tower of London, listen out for the sound of sandals slapping against the floors. As we draw the curtains on our eerie journey through the Tower of London, haunted by its 13 restless spirits, we're left with a chilling reminder of the tower's dark past. From the mournful wails of Anne Boleyn to the somber march of the White Lady, each ghostly tale we've uncovered is a thread in the rich tapestry of England's history. These stories, steeped in tragedy and mystery, beckon us to look beyond the surface, to question what we know, and to marvel at the enduring power of the past to touch the present. For those brave enough to delve into the shadows with us at the Dark World Hub, we thank you for your fearless curiosity. Remember, the world is full of mysteries waiting to be explored, and every shadow hides a story. If you've enjoyed this spectral journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales from the dark side of history. Until next time, keep the lights on and stay curious.